All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening, and we're sorry to have you here on such a beautiful night. But let's see what we can do together to try to move these issues forward. So I'm Gary Christensen, Mayor of the City of Malden, and I'm also Chair of the Malden School Committee. Just a couple of housekeeping details. We do want to let you know the bathrooms are off to my left, to your right. Also, we'd ask that you place your phones on vibrate. I'm going to help moderate tonight's meeting, and we'll go as long as it takes to try to get all of the questions answered and to see if we can, again, work together to move ourselves forward. I also want to make sure that you know we do have some additional resources here this evening. Off to my right, we have Rob McCarthy from the school committee representing Ward 2, Jen Spatafora representing Ward 3, and we have Lenny Iadino representing Ward 4. So I think the way we're going to conduct tonight's meeting, we're first going to hear from our school superintendent, who will make an opening statement as to where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And then we're going to immediately get into your questions, and again, go as long as we can to answer as many as we can, and then try to figure out, where do we go from here. One other thing is tonight, if there's something that you think of after the meeting, there is going to be a formal school committee meeting this Monday night, July 1st, at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. We do offer public comment at our meetings. So again, if there's something that you thought of after tonight's meeting, you can either express it at the school committee meeting, or you can contact any of our representatives here this evening. So first, let me just tell you who's on our panel tonight. We have our school business manager, Tony Mertz, and we also have Jenny McGoldrick, who is the director of before and after school programming. So without further ado, let's hear from our school superintendent, John O'Teary, and then again, we'll get right into your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody coming out tonight. We're using this, I meet with the mayor weekly, and we decided, his suggestion was to have a public meeting to discuss some of this. Before we start, I will say that the communication on this was not ideal, and I own that. I'll take the hit on that. That was not my intention, but that's my fault. I'm the superintendent, and that's where that finger should be pointed to, and I apologize. There was no malintent with that, but that was not ideal. So the mayor suggested that we have a public meeting, which we're using as a listening meeting to really get some ideas and inputs from you. We're here to discuss two issues. One is the after-school program, and the second one is the extended learning time vote at the Salemwood School, which they've opted out of participating in the extended learning time program. Just to give a bit of a perspective as to why we had looked at eliminating the 7th and 8th grade as our after-school program, it was really due to under-enrollment. We had 17 8th grade students across the district in it, and 51 7th grade students. The tuition was very low. It was about $200 a year, which if you annualize that, it's about $1 a day. What this did, because we have to staff it 5 days a week, we were paying about $200,000 in salaries for our staff and taking in a little over $25,000, thus creating a deficit of about $170,000. Middle grade programming is by itself very difficult because it's at an age when many kids are not opting to continue in that. Their parents are not willing to pay for something that they're not interested in. So we had effectively a low-cost to no-cost program with very little enrollment in it. If I could just finish my statement, then we'll take some questions, if that's okay. So that was what prompted us to really analyze this. We want to have strong programs with good enrollment, and many of our neighboring communities have had difficulty with the 7th and 8th grade and have eliminated them. And we just looked at the numbers, and that was what prompted that. We do have some options here within the city. Our recreation department runs some programs after school. a number of them which are free. We also have, the Malden Library is a partner that has some programming. But we're here, I know that some of you have given some suggestions, and we're here to take some of that input as well. We also believe that now that there is the loss of the extended time here at the Salemwood, there may be an increase in people who would want their 7th and 8th grade students to participate. But we would need to, out of fiscal responsibility, have really a critical mass in order to run it. It's not unlike, running a course at the high school. If we only have 2 students signed up, we really can't run that. We would look at and really take your ideas, take your suggestions, and really look at this as a meeting to maybe come up with some ways to solve these problems. We're really here to do that. Just also on the extended learning time, and I know Ms. Van is here and she's going to be passing out, the new hours of the Salemwood School will be just like it is at the BB School. So the K-6 students go from 8:15 to 2:15, and the 7th and 8th grade students go from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. 2:20, I'm sorry, 2:20, but she's passing that out. So I think at this point we can go back to the mayor and begin some questions.
So again, this doesn't have to be by any topic. We can do ELT, and then we can jump to after school and back and forth. So I think you raised your hand first. So could I have you just step up? I don't know if this is going to reach.
So I am a 7th grader in September. He's at Linden School. And I have emailed probably all of you all the time because there was a question about using the program last year. So I think we may have a small enrollment, maybe, I don't know how many, over 10, 7 or 8 hundred. I'm a working parent. I'm willing to pay more than whatever. Okay, I want my child safe. I want him in school. I want to know he's not allowed home. He's not allowed to walk home. So if I'm telling you I'm willing to pay whatever, you guys are looking for money. Well, here we go. Send me a bill. I'll gladly pay send me a bill for $1,000. I don't care.
Okay.
I want my child safe. Now, there's another question. We've got a handful of 7th and 8th graders at our school. Linda Robbins there. She runs our program. Now, our kids are all good kids. You know what? Let them have a snack. Let them do their homework. Let them read a book. 5 o'clock comes, I pick up my kid. What do you have to do extra to entertain my child? He's not a kindergartner. He's not a 1st grader. He's a 7th and 8th grader. There are 7th graders that I don't want home alone with under no supervision. Especially in the city of Malden. I don't feel so safe that a child should be on the streets or left home. Okay? So I'm willing to pay and send, right? If I'm willing to pay for a program, and if you don't have to entertain these kids, what is it if my child sits in the cafeteria and reads a book?
Yeah, we hear what
and
you're
has
saying.
a
We'll
snack?
look at that. Yep.
So I know that he's safe.
Yep.
So I gotta suffer because I work, and then there's people in the city that get assistance, who want to offer a sliding scale. So what, people that are on weekend get, their kids can go to after-school program to 6th grade, but I'm willing to pay. So do the sliding scale and charge me based on my salary.
Okay.
That's how I do it.
So if we started to look at that, different options within what we charge for the program?
7th and 8th grade. You don't have to be.
Yeah, we just wanted, let's hear his response, and then we'll go to some other people.
I mean, we can look at that and put out, a pricing that would make it sustainable. I mean, the problem we have is we can't spend in the deficit.
This program is until 6 o'clock anyway.
We'll come back. We're going to do second questions. Someone have their hand up here. Yeah, Steph, why don't you come right up?
The program is there anyway.
My question is really simple. When did you start realizing that you're in deficit? Was it a week before school vacation? Because right now we're in school vacation and we're discussing something that's really important to a lot of
It should
people.
have been
In a lot
done,
of
discussed 6 months ago, not
Okay,
now.
let's find out when this was happening. When did we get wind that something was off about the grant?
We've been analyzing this throughout the spring, and we were in the budgets process of this. Like I said, had I Could I do this over? I would have got this out probably in May. Mid-May, I think was probably, and, you know, we were behind. That was my fault. I own it.
You get a call on Saturday.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's too
Okay.
late though.
Let's take some other questions, right here. Want to come, give you the mic. Well, it's being recorded, okay, so we'd like to have you step up. if we
Good
can.
evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr.
So we'd like to have you guys step
Superintendent.
up, so,
Oh, okay,
just because they're recording it, so they want the rest of the community to see it.
okay. I have a
Nice to see you. Sure.
see regarding this school in particular.
All right.
And this is directly to the superintendent first. Do we have a sixth grade special ed teacher being interviewed for the incoming school year yet?
Let's take all the questions and we'll answer them
And
one by
then
one.
the second part of this is taking away the extended learning time in his school when I brought just a 7-hour that I take the whole year with the whole team, and I don't just do the 2 meetings for special ed to put an IEP in place. I take extra time, 2 to 3 extra meetings. I'm in touch with the team and teachers, and most of them are here today to express, yes, that I am a concerned parent, as well as I'm sure many other IEP students are. But when you take away an hour and a half of school, you're also taking time that they need for special education. So I need to know what plan is in place to make sure that they don't lose the time that they need. What classes are they gonna lose? Are they gonna lose the extended time that they need for extracurriculars? For some kids that have ADD, that need that extra time to wind down, to go to music, to go to gym, to have recess, without losing everything that we parents, and, you know, further that, my grandson is deaf and has other learning disabilities that go into that too, communication, speech. So his may be more than others, not to say that other kids don't have the same needs, but we can't afford to lose the hours that we worked so hard to implement for these IEPs that are due to start day 1. Not come back day 1. There should be somebody here from the special ed department to answer to these questions of what we will lose in our IEPs based on losing the hours of school.
Your third question?
Well, I mean, those can wait.
Okay. So you want to get those 2 answered?
But basically, yeah,
Okay.
being a special ed school parent,
Yeah.
can't afford to take away from the kids that are.
All right, let's see what he has to say, and
Sure. In answer to the first question, they are interviewing for the 6th grade special ed teacher. With regard to the IEPs, they're obviously going to have to be adjusted because the hours at the school have adjusted.
Well, no, they can't. So I guess the ultimate answer to that is the ones that have the most critical, you know, my
Right, we're going to get some guidance from the Department of Ed.
Everybody is an option to send so that this particular child that I'm concerned about doesn't lose, because he can't afford to lose 1 minute of it. As I'm sure other parents in here that do have IEPs can't afford to lose.
okay.
But we're going to work with the Department of Ed because there were several schools in the state that opted to not participate in the extended learning time grant. So there's several other schools that are in the same position we are. We're going to work with the state on how to adjust that and meet the compliance and the requirements of
Get
the
that answer,
IEP.
we'll follow back up. We'll get that
Okay,
answer.
how soon, and can we have a follow-up meeting with somebody from a special ed
Sure,
department?
we can do that.
can answer to these, look at these IEPs, look at how hard the parents have worked with the teams that they've worked with.
Right.
Because adjusting them to accommodate, I mean, we found out after the
But
last
we-
day of school, that is unfair. That is unfair.
That was when the vote was taken.
Well, that's absolutely unacceptable, and to wait to the beginning of the school year is unacceptable.
Yeah, no, he acknowledged that. We'll go get on that. We'll have someone back here to speak to those issues. Okay? And we'll have someone in place on the hiring. That's happening now, the interview.
Well, I mean, that also should be in place so that that teacher has files of students that they need to
Right.
be brought up to date on.
If you had to guess, when will we have that appointment made?
For this special ed. I don't know if the plan is in the process, a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks, Principal Van? Okay,
Okay,
so we'll circle back on
Parents
that.
will be given periodic
Yes,
and timely,
yes.
and then who do we get in contact with, say, 3 weeks before school starts, if we haven't heard anything?
Me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
All
thank
right.
you, Mr.
Let's see,
Superintendent.
I want to come back. I want to give other people a chance to ask a question first, so we'll come back. There's plenty of time for second questions, okay? Who hasn't asked a question now wants to? Come right up.
So my question was regarding the 21st century grant that you guys didn't apply for. And I was agreeing with you, I was agreeing to absolutely everything you said about wanting someone to watch your son. But just to let you know, people on welfare, not all of them are sitting home, they're eating chips. Let me tell you that, because I'm a single mother, my daughter's father died, I'm in nursing school halfway through, and I'm on welfare.
And then they take
She
away.
acknowledged
But I just want to make that clear, but there are some people,
I totally.
Yeah.
okay.
So let's,
It's tough
she
being
acknowledged that.
Right,
She said-
so I was wondering why you guys chose not to apply for the 21st century grant.
Okay, let's get that. Why do we not apply? Let's,
Sure. First of all, I applaud your efforts of going back to nursing school. It's very excellent. Good for you. The requirements and the reporting of the grant has changed this year, and as a result, we're not eligible for it in the upcoming years. Not that we didn't apply, we're not eligible because of the requirements and the reporting aspect that accompanied it. We can reapply for it next year, not this coming year, but we would need to see if that would fit into the needs of our students and our programming. But the Department of Ed had said that we would be eligible for it next year. So it wasn't that we didn't apply.
then I want to jump and tell the people, okay?
I spoke to the woman who's in charge of the 21st century grant, her name is Carol Resnick. She told me specifically that you guys chose not to go ahead and apply for it, that she said, I want to make it clear to you that it was not us, they do qualify, but you guys chose against it.
All right, that's fine, Doc. All right, so let's clarify your answer on that. Sure.
I can tell you unequivocally, we were on a conference call with the Associate Commissioner, who's Carol Resnick's boss. That would be Rochelle Bennett-Engler, who told us that we are ineligible for it. It's not that we did not apply. We are ineligible to apply for next year. That's inaccurate that we, because of how the grant has to be reported and the requirements of it, which we had not been doing any differently than had been done in the past, but the reporting of it had changed. And we were cited and said, you can't do this next year. You're ineligible to apply, you can go back to the following year.
All right, who else hasn't asked a question for the first time?
No, they're lying. You're absolutely lying.
So I have a kid that goes to Linden, and we live over by the high school. I am not comfortable with my kid walking home. I am not comfortable with him taking the MBTA. I know a few years back, you guys took away the buses, so I'm thinking, what plan do you have for our children to make it home safely? Especially special needs children. Shouldn't be on
If we came up with a fee, some kind of reasonable fee,
Yes.
you'd be willing to?
Yeah, a fee
Okay.
for a bus,
Okay.
a fee, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to ask a question? Or?
Well, basically, about
Just
the
maybe-
transportation,
okay.
I live 2.2 miles away. I was actually leaving work at 2:30 to pick up my son at 3:25 here.
Okay.
Now, I can't even pick him up, and I live in Edgeworth.
But if we could find a reasonable compromise, you'd be willing to pay a little
Absolutely.
more?
I work for a school.
Okay.
I actually do transportation for a school.
Okay.
And we have public transportation for students, and the parents pay, it's like $150
Okay.
for the school year. And
All
I'm
right, we're gonna
willing to
look,
do that.
we're gonna look into that.
Good evening. I too am a single parent, and I don't want my 8th grader going home every day as a latchkey kid to an empty house until I get home from my job at all. So I am happy to pay more than the $25 per session. That was a steal for years, like almost ridiculous, to be honest with you. In the past, citizen schools, when they were here, they didn't do Fridays because, fine, my 8th grader goes home on Fridays, I can handle that. But every day, they need something. And if you think that like the YW, the YM is a good program, then give us the information, let us know what it's going to be. Please supply us with something. But I know I am willing to pay more than $75 a year is ridiculous, truly.
We think a reasonable fee.
You know, for 7th and 8th graders, they don't need a lot of, supervision. They need people to keep them there, safe. For a soccer game, maybe 2 adults, you know, one wants to do homework, because we have a lot of 7th and 8th graders who want to do their homework. They want to read, they want to just do something quiet, a board game with a friend. And that's all I'm looking for my 7th and 8th grader.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? Want to come right up? I bring it to you, but it's not for us.
Hey everybody. So I have a question about the 7th and 8th grade program. Obviously, the costs are the big issue on this. Have we looked at what our options are for having parent volunteers come and pick up some of the slack there? Because I know there are plenty of parents like me who would be willing to throw in a couple extra hours so that other parents who are stuck at work don't have to worry about their kids coming home to an empty house.
Okay.
So, you know, if that's a legal possibility, I would love if we explore that.
Thank you. All right, what about that possibility?
We can explore that. There may be some legal. There may. Can everybody hear me if I talk like this? There may be, we want to run that past our legal department. I think that there'd be some issues that we want to know going into it. I think I'm better now. So we can look at that.
Good.
After running the after-school program by yourself this year, what changes have you looked back on? What changes are you implementing next year?
Hello?
Can we just ask you, so is it just looking back?
Yeah, looking back, so you guys took over the program this past year.
Right.
And I know for a lot of people it was a bumpy ride. You
Right.
know, I can't find, where is everybody? I can't find my kid, where is my kid?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is my kid doing? All of that. So after reviewing the first year of running the program, have you guys looked back, did a hot wash, and examined and picked out a few things that you might do better or do differently?
Got it. Does that make sense?
Good evening, everyone. So I actually came in the middle of the school year, which was also a challenge for me. So in my first 6-7 months here, I really did a lot of assessment, and I agree about the safety of the program is always the most important thing. So I think what we're going to be doing is taking a look at staffing, training, safety, the needs of each building, because each building has different students that they serve, and then those students come to the after school. So we really need to take a look at that. Also working with principals and the special education department as well. Where was I at? The special education as well is helpful because we have a lot of students with diverse needs after school, which can be tricky as well because we don't always have the same services during the school day as after school. So we're looking at safety, I think, is number one from my perspective as the new director of the program.
Yep.
Hi, Michelle Wong, Ward 7, parent. My question is for you guys. Have you guys really looked at maybe possibly taking the Malden Teen Enrichment Program and expanding it into the 7th and 8th grade or a version of it? That's my first question. The second question was taking away the after-school program for 7th and 8th grade. Is that across the entire city?
Let's take the second question first.
Sure, that would be for the 4 schools. The Ferrywood was run separately. The YWCA runs that after-school program, and they have for a number of years. The first part of your question was on expanding MTech, and I think the mayor could answer that one.
We, where is Mr. Yeah, right there, sorry. We fleetingly talked about it, but based on what's happening here tonight, we're going to give it a closer look. Maria Louise, Chief of Staff at the Mayor's Office, also sits on Malden Teen Enrichment Center board. So, it would be a huge undertaking, as you can imagine. To run the Malden Teen Enrichment Center as it is today, it's roughly a couple of $100,000, but, we'll take a look at it. Other questions that haven't been asked? Then we'll come back to people that already asked a question. Good evening.
So obviously, we're all part of the community. We're all here because we want our kids to be safe. We're all residents of Malden, so I think as we band together, we know the cost of living in Malden is outrageous. So every parent here, 2-parent homes, or one single parent, we all need to work full-time jobs, if not more than one job. I have 2 boys. I have one with ADHD, I have one with ADD, and they get impeccable services, but I'm not completely comfortable with them getting home safely or being at home. So like fire safety, is there gonna be other things lined up where there's gonna be extra police on the bike paths, because sometimes kids get, into groups and stuff like that. What about crossing guards? Like if I'm at work and I need to make money in order to survive, to live here in Malden because this is my community, I need to know, and you guys need to trust in me, because if my children are being unattended and unsupervised, they're not going to act the way they would if I were to be home. So as a neighborhood and all of these children just being unsupervised, we're going to worry about drugs. Malden has taken a huge leap in preventing teen pregnancy, drugs, all of these things, and so I think we're taking a step back. We have the Teen Enrichment Center, so for these 7th and 8th graders, us as a community, we're worried about how our children are going to be affected. Children aren't getting pregnant but if we're not all home, honestly, let's be completely honest, these are things we have to think about, drugs and stuff like that. We have worked together through the years to make Malden the place that we call home. People are buying houses in Malden for $500,000, $600,000. My rent alone for a 3-bedroom is $2,300. I cannot afford to work any less. If not, I have to, so at this point, how can we keep our community safe, and that's with our children? What is going to be in place? Because at the end of the day, if Malden becomes this place where children are just reckless, unsupervised, drugs, everything else, we're taking a huge leap back.
So, like some of the
So what are the precautions? Do you think that we'll be able to get crossing guards to get them home? Maybe the police, patrolling and stuff like that.
Well, we don't have to get to that point. That's why we're here tonight, to see if we can come up with some happy medium despite what's happening at the state level. So like some of your fellow parents here, would you be willing to, if we could come up with something on the fee to make something happen? Okay.
Take your hand raised on.
All right, who hasn't asked a question? Do you want to ask a
You want
question?
to take your hand raised on who would be willing to spend more money?
Okay. So she just suggested show of hands. Would people be willing to pay a little bit more if we could? Okay. Yeah, again, I want to get to other people that haven't asked a question. I want to give everybody a chance to ask a question. So we'll have Ms. Nyland, then we'll come to you, okay? Yep. Ms. Nyland first. Do you want to step up too? We'll have you go right after her.
Go ahead, ladies, just go. Yeah.
You want to yield?
Yes, I
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go to you and then Ms. Nyland, okay? Good evening.
Hi, I echo all of the concerns that the parents have shared already, and in addition, I wanted to ask about what will be cut in the day as a result of not having the extended learning time.
All right, Superintendent?
Actually, the staff and the union are working on how that day will look, because there's an impact of what happens with the specialist, adjusting the schedule, making sure that there's equity with all of our staff, because we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the collective bargaining agreement. So all that's being worked out. We are doing that in concert with the Malden Education Association, and looking at the models that, in particular the Beebe, because it's the most similar school in the district in terms of a non-extended learning time school here. So that's all being worked out. I don't have specifics. We're not looking at cutting anything, but the time itself may be cut. For instance, I can tell you right off the bat, I think right now it's a 30-minute recess here. That will revert back to the 15 because we need to make sure that we're in compliance with time on learning, which is a state mandate, and that's what the BB has.
Superintendent, you will follow back up at some point as to what the schedule will look like in the adjusted times. Yeah. If you had to guess, Principal Bam, when would we be able to let parents know what this new schedule will look like? July, August? July, okay. So something will go out to everyone as to what this adjusted schedule will look like, and if need be, we'll come back together and see if there's something we can do about it. All right, now, Ms. Nyland, let me go to Ms. Nyland, who had her hand up, and then I'll come to you right after Ms. Nyland, okay?
Hi, good evening. I'm a Malden resident, parent of Malden students, former Malden students, graduates of Malden High, and I also work at Salemwood. I have two related questions. What plan is in place to continue to advise families of Salemwood students about the upcoming changes in school hours, not just tonight? And secondly, what plan is in place to communicate this information in multiple languages?
All right, so 2 questions, Superintendent.
Sure, we're working on a communication now. I've talked with Principal Van. We hope to have a letter out in the next week, which will be translated into at least 7 languages, I believe, that we'll have that out. We'll also post that on the website. We'll put it out on social media. We'll put it out through a Connect Ed call as well, notifying folks. So we'll get that out there in as many ways as we can, in as many languages as we possibly can.
Hi, just want to recap on some of the mom's comments reference to 7th and 8th grade programs. Rather than try to fix how we're going to get things saved afterwards, that's great. If we don't get rid of it at all, that's one way to save money on that. Also, if parents are willing to spend more money. And also the 7th and 8th graders don't need the stimulation as the younger children, as the other mom had said. So these adults are there anyway. So it's not like they're going to take some of those adults and, like, say, you no longer are working these hours. You're still working these hours. So I think you have plenty of care for these youngsters.
Thank you. Okay, other questions for first time? Good evening.
I hate public speaking, so thank you for this. I just had general questions about the after-school program. I wanted to know the cost. It sounds like from the letter we got it's going to increase. What the hours are going to be, when we're going to have to pick up our child. And I forget the last. Oh, how do we sign up? I heard there's a new way to sign up.
All right, let's take those 3 questions one at a time. Do you want to start from the back end? How do you sign up?
So we do have a new system. It's called the Easy Child Track system. We did get some feedback about the My School Bucks that it wasn't user-friendly, both on the family side and on our side, as administrators looking at the information. So we researched, and Easy Child Track is used in many other after-school programs, for kids only, which is in multiple cities. So we launched it this summer, and we got some really good feedback from the people that registered this summer camp. And it's actually used as a communication tool as well. It has a bulletin board feature, so any important information will be posted on the bulletin board, and families will be able to interact with it more than they were able to do with the My School Bucks. So that's the first piece. So registration is through Easy Child Track. Also, once you have an account, you don't have to recreate it. When you're registering for a summer, you already have a school year account, you just click register for summer camp and it should be all set. You just have to pay the fee. The hours of the school are going to be, now that we're changing at Salemwood, will be open at dismissal for every school until 6 o'clock, I believe. I think ELC is different, but it sounds like we're more concerned with the older grades.
What's the third question?
Oh, the rates. Yeah, so, right, so we're in a deficit. I think we've made that clear. So currently, the income is not able to support. The program has grown even since I've been here. Obviously, we know there's a need. That's why after school has been so important in many communities. So Unfortunately, the low price is not going to be able to stay with us for much longer. So we are looking at neighboring cities and towns to make sure that it's comparable. It's not to make a profit, but we can't continue to run in a deficit.
But to the parents' question, when are we announcing what the changes will be? How are we announcing it?
I'm way behind my rail schedule. I usually register for school year in May for the upcoming school year so people can secure. So I'm hoping to do it in July, but we just started our summer program, so once I get that off the ground, I'll be able to launch the school year.
All right, who else hasn't asked a question for the first time? I think we already had you speak. Come right up. We're coming back to you though. Don't worry, we're gonna go as long as it takes.
Hi, so I'd just like some clarification regarding what you just said about the ELC, because when I attended an ELC Schools and Council meeting, I was told that after school would be switching hours and ending at 5:30 next year per formal documentation, but I was told that that was because all schools in Malden would be ending at 5:30 for after-school programming. That was the information that I was told at the ELC, and I brought that to the PB School Site Council, at which point the interim principal hadn't heard anything.
When did you get that info? April. Okay. All right, who can speak to that? Is it 5:30? Is it 6? Is it decided?
I think it's because the school time shifted as well, so it's the same service hours, it's closing at 5:30.
Yeah, that's less time for us, because as working families, I want to be able to not worry about getting my kid by 5:30 on the dot with traffic that I can't control. And so, and all over Summerville and everywhere.
All right, we'll take a look at that. So it was 6, you're
Well,
saying?
it's been nickel for
Yeah.
the last 2 years.
Understood. Okay,
And
we'll
then
take another look at that.
change it to 5:30 because all of them changed.
Right. So we'll try to get clarification on that and report back, okay?
Is this time gonna
Let me give you the
affect
mic.
the,
Just because they're recording it. Yeah.
is the after-school program going to affect those in first through sixth grade as well, as far as the time? Because as of right now, Forestdale has it till 6 o'clock.
There won't be any changes for the grades K to 6.
All right, yep, come right up.
I just have a question about getting the after-school hours. I've heard that the kids who are enrolled for 5 days a week for after school have more chances of getting enrolled into the program. But for me, I have kids who I just need 3 days a week for the after-school program. So what's the probability, possibility of me getting kids enrolled in the after-school program rather than the kids getting enrolled for 5 days a week?
Good question. All right, can you answer that?
I'm not sure where you heard that, but that's not how we enroll. It's typically on a first come, first served basis. We are looking at the model, though we may be eliminating the 1 and 2 day week. We have to take a look when we run the numbers. Sometimes it's not sustainable to have the 1 day a week families, and it also takes seats up for the 5 day a week people. But we're looking at 3 day minimum.
So we're going to look at that, okay? We'll circle back. I wrote that down as a note. So who else hasn't asked a question? Otherwise, we're going to go back to people. Come right up. Okay, we'll come right after, okay? Let me have her, and then we'll come to you next, okay?
My kids are little, so the 7th and 8th grade isn't an issue yet, but if people are willing to just pay the regular rate that I'm paying, is there a specific reason those kids can't just go for that rate? That seems odd, but I pay about $200 a month, I think, for my daughter to go, which I think sounds like you're willing to pay that?
I pay $2,000 a year for my child. If you do 2 of them, I might as well not have a job.
Right.
We're going to look at that whole.
Yeah, just wondering. It seemed odd that it wasn't an option. Yeah. And the other one, the Easy Child's registration, I forget what it's called, the website. I was just wondering what you were going to do about the summer camp deposits, and if you will be applying the deposits to the tuition.
Understand that question?
So I think there was a misunderstanding, and it is not going towards the rate of the weekly rate. So it would be something we would have to discuss internally because most families already paid it.
You have that written down, John? You have that written down there. We're going to follow back up on that, okay? But we know what you're trying to ask there. So let's bring it over here. If I could have you step here so there's no feedback.
I'm just here to echo some of the points that have already been raised by other family members. I sent an email to Mr. Orteri and CC the mayor as well regarding this issue because I'm really concerned. I have an 8th grader. He goes to Linden. He has been going to the after-school program at Linden from kindergarten till now. There's no, both me and my husband, we both work at Cambridge and Longwood. We really cannot come before 4 p.m. Like we can start from our working place at around 4 p.m. And so we cannot be here by before 5:30. I hope you know what the public transport is like, including the MBTs and the buses. So I understand there can be some financial constraints, but I'm assuming that any of the families would be willing to pay for it. I think one of the ladies over here, she raised the point that we as parents can also volunteer. I would love to volunteer. I specified that in the email as well. And it's really important to remember that it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just the family. It's the responsibility of the teachers, the community. And if our kids are safe, the city can be safe. If our kids in the middle school are good, then and only then the Malden High School can be. So please do all you can not to close the after-school program for the middle schoolers.
Anybody else who has not asked a question? No, it's okay, you said. This is your page, okay?
So, I get all the thing, I agree with everyone. My son goes to the Forestdale, he's special needs. I work in Dorchester, so I am hauling behind to get here on time to pick him up. But now that we don't have it, I don't know what I'm gonna do with him. I just found out that he can't even do summer school next year, so that's a whole other problem, but at least that gives me a year. Right. Are we gonna get an answer before August? Yes. And if we're not gonna get an answer before August, you need to let us know where else we can go. Because like even when I called the Y to help me out this summer, no one even called me back. I emailed them 5-6 times. They are just not, all they keep saying, we're waiting, we're waiting. I never got an answer. Now, he goes to summer school, school bus drops him off. I am leaving Dorchester at 1 o'clock to be here by the time he gets out of school to meet the school bus. So I'm missing time out of work, which hurts him in the long run. I mean, he's special needs, and there's no way in heck I'm leaving him at home. There's absolutely no way. And right now, Malden is going down the hill. There are people sleeping in cars. There are people hanging out. It was never like that. Over the last year, it has gotten horrible. I live on the first floor. I don't even leave my windows open anymore because people are just hanging out. She knows. She lives there. It's just horrible. And there's just nobody doing anything. I don't see police hanging around, circling around, and for these kids to be hanging out, they're having phones. Next thing you know, our kids are getting robbed of phones because they're coming home. They're having keys. Next thing you know, my house is broken into. It's just not fair. And at the end of the day, these kids are the most important things to all of us. And I think we really need to work hard because, like anyone else, I would pay the money because his safety is more important than anything else in the world today.
You'll have an answer before August. We'll let you know before August. Anybody else? Let me just see if there's any other family members, parents. Save the school committee for, do you want to wait for them to get all their questions in? Who had a hand up? Hold on one second. All right, yeah. Do you want to yield to her and then I'll come to you right after? I just have you come here to avoid the feedback, I think. Good evening.
So I'm a parent of a Salemwood student. Have you guys explored the possibility of having college students come in to help with the after-school program also? And my experience with the director of the after-school program, she is not good at getting back to me. I'm dealing with a frustrating issue right now. The easy, whatever the program is online, was not clear. I do have concerns about, I can address it after, but I do have some concerns.
Okay. So if you could stay after, we'll have our director speak with you. And,
It's not,
oh.
different director.
Oh, do you want to? But she can talk to you after, right? Yeah, she'll try and assist you right after. Now, on the first question, Superintendent, college students.
We can look into that. I mean, I don't know if we pay them, if they would volunteer. College students' schedules tend to be a little tricky at times. You know, my experience in the past with college students is some work out well because they can show up, but others their schedules get a little tricky. They go on long breaks over the semester break, so you have some inconsistency there in terms of staffing, but I mean, it's certainly something we can look at.
Right here? No, we just we'll come back, okay?
We all found out about the 7th and 8th grade on the last day of school, which is no notice at all. You're already planning for next year and you're depending on that. When did you find out that you weren't able to get that grant or apply for the grant? If we found out on the last day of school, why would we never wait?
Earlier I addressed that. The first thing I said was I apologize for the communication. That was my fault. We were in discussions with the state this spring, and when we were going through the budget process simultaneously, ideally I would have got this out in May. I was behind, and that's my fault. I own that. I apologize for that. There was no malintent with that, but that was my fault.
All right, other questions? First time I want to have people up. I want to make sure everybody gets at least one question and that wants to ask. Where, Ms. Calvin? Yeah, come right up. Yeah. Let me have you the mic, please.
So I heard two different answers. The first was 5:30, that school was gonna head till 6, and then I heard 5:30. Do we have an idea of which it is? Because my concern is this, the hours are now being changed. I've been through 3 jobs this year because I cannot get to work in time to drop off my daughter in time to get to her. I'm also a single parent. So now, if it's till 5:30, I have to work until 5:30. So what do people do? I mean, we're concerned about, you know, our kids being in school enough time and these hours not being taken away. And also, it's a big part of the reason I moved to this area because of school hours. So people need to work to support their families, and I mean, every situation is different, but I mean, this is a big issue, and then to find out now, I think is absolutely absurd at this stage.
5:36, 5:30, how did this all go down?
I think that the K to 6 is 6 o'clock. The only concern was the ELC, and they're gonna take a look at that.
Does that answer your question? All right, you already asked, right, a question, so let me just try to make sure everybody gets to ask at least one question. Everybody all set for the first time? Otherwise, we'll go second. Jack, come right up. Good evening, Ms. Ecker.
Hi, my name's Jackie Ecker, Forestdale, soon-to-be middle school parent. So, we've always loved Forestdale. We love, I appreciate that you've been always responsive to me. I emailed you about this, and I appreciate that, and you did respond, so thank you. My thing is, I feel like before we outright cancel a program, I would like to know what other options you looked into before you outright canceled it. You know, for example, some creative options are, and we talked about this on Facebook, so I cannot accept the response for this creativity, but people were saying, what if we took all the middle school kids and had them meet at one location instead of having them dispersed across 5 different schools? Would that be more cost effective? Now, you know, Forestdale, Linden, Salemwood, they're all pretty close to each other. Kids can take the bus by the time they're in 7th or 8th grade. I personally think, why can't we consolidate the kids in one location and maybe create a more cost-effective option that way? It's just, it's very disruptive to have it just canceled outright, and I would love to see some creative solutioning before we go and cancel things outright. Thank you.
Want to comment on that?
We certainly can look at consolidating a program, but I've also heard tonight some people who don't think that it's appropriate for their kids to go on public transportation. And we have a transportation thing, but we can certainly put that out as a potential option to explore.
School bus.
All right, so other questions for the first time? Anybody else? Otherwise, we're going to go back to folks that have asked questions previously, which we'll start with you.
There's someone.
Was there someone? I'm sorry. Yeah, come right up. Sorry, it's not cordless, so let me just...
I just when you realized that our program was canceled, do you think about any possibility to do something for us extra? Or, I don't know, maybe create a program with college students to help out the school?
So when this was going down, did we think of other options? Tell us what your thoughts were there.
Well, part of our thought and logic was that when it was run for practically free, we had a very little enrollment. We didn't think that increasing the tuition would bring a boost in the number of students returning. We logically thought that that might go down. We're here to listen to some creative ideas and solutions, and certainly we've been provided with a number that we're going to take under advisement and look at about the feasibility. We need to make sure that we're not creating a deficit when we do it, and I think we need to ensure that we would have a critical mass of students to participate in that. So.
Anybody else? First time. All right, so you already asked. So Ms. Spatafora, do you want to, and then I'm going to take seconds if you want to.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
Our parent, Ms. Renata over there.
Oh, yeah, sure. Come right up.
She asked me to ask a few questions on her behalf. Her English is not good.
You want to? Oh, okay, got it. All right, fair enough. Yep, sure. How many are there?
There's 3.
Okay.
They're unrelated to the topics at hand, but Ms. Renata over there asked me to voice her concern. She's a parent of a 2nd grader in the Salemwood school, and you know, in lieu of possibly losing staff because of the hours cut back, which I've heard a few people say that they've lost their position and have been offered to other schools in the city. The class size, 27 to 1 teacher, is that going to increase?
You want to ask the other questions? And then we'll have
The answer is no. Obviously, we all have an issue with the parking and the intermittent parking police, if you will, that will come, send them on their way one day, be gone for the next 3 days, and it goes back to normal, and then we're back to bedlam. Is there going to be any addressing to that issue in coming years, in this coming year? And the third question is for her, which to me is the most important. Apparently her 2nd grader was bullied in a bathroom by a 7th grader. Nothing was done, and the child is now having to see a psychologist, and she has allowed me to divulge that information. And how, going forward, is the school prepared, with knowledge of that, to deal with these issues without a kid having to go to psychologists to deal with a situation that should be education first in a school, and not have to be worried about being bullied, being scared for a day? And these again are going back to Miss Renata.
You want to take those two questions? I think you answered the first, right?
The displacement, there were 3 paraprofessionals because their positions were tied to the state funding, so they were able to be relocated to other schools and not lose their job. We are increasing the staffing here at the Salemwood, as you saw at the budget meeting, so there will be an increase in staffing. I don't know, are you looking for more parking enforcement? Is that the question?
Yeah,
that's something we have to take
I would look, we can discuss that. We're meeting with our parking department this summer on a number of issues and other schools, so I think we can talk with that. With respect to the bullying, it needs to be reported so that we can investigate it immediately and address it in the most timely manner.
Okay, other first-time questions? Any others? All right, so we'll start going around. We'll take seconds. So I told you be first.
Just like everybody here, since this came out, like, I've been, like, I really don't know what to do. I'm so worried.
Let's have a shot at it. That's why we're
Honestly.
here tonight.
So I feel like the 7th and 8th graders, that's who needs, like, supervision, guidance. And I'm just worried sick about it. And also to the other mother that you said about, like, having a college student come in. I know, like, Malden Catholic, they used to come into our daycare because they needed, like, volunteer hours, so many hours. Why not coordinate with Malden High seniors, Malden Catholic seniors, have them come in if they need to do service hours. They need the CC, like the Mystic Valley kids, the high school, they need so many service hours per year. Why not engage them? And I know the letter or email that went out about this, you were saying about a sliding scale. A sliding scale is a great idea across all families. This way, you pay what you can, I'll pay what I can. And I think that's a good compromise. Another thing is, because my son is on IEP and struggles, I pay for a private tutor. I would love to have a tutor at Linden School that I don't have to have come at dinner time and disrupt my dinner. I would pay to have a tutor at 3 o'clock a week, have a teacher. I would pay extra for that. Like, that's another option, maybe to offer like a homework help or a tutoring one-on-one, but then charge me extra.
Okay. You had a question, right? Follow-up? Just give you the mic, okay? Being recorded, and then we'll jump in, okay? Ma'am, go ahead and go later.
So I was wondering why there was no communication also about not having summer camp for the 7th and 8th graders. Usually people start looking for camp early spring and they have already something booked. Didn't know until the very end. I don't know about everybody else, but my kid has no camp this summer. I know that the Malden Police Department did put out this 1-week thing that everybody signed up for, and those kids obviously are not there.
Let's find out what happened. All right, what say you? What happened?
I know that we were offering for Rising K to 6. I'm not sure what happened in the previous summer. I think it was funded by the grant. Maybe Tony.
So in the prior years, a portion of the 7th and 8th was funded by the summer grant, but again, the really low enrollment, even last year, I think we might have had 5 kids for the middle school grades that were enrolled. There was probably about 50 in total, but at the middle school grades, there was only about 5 or 6 at the middle school level. There wasn't a lot of kids, and that, again, led us to make that decision that we can't continue to run things at a deficit and expect to come out on top all the time.
And then I'm going to jump around. So we're going to go to you, and then I'll have you, and then I'll come to you.
So I know you had mentioned that the recess, my son goes to the Salemwood school, and you mentioned the recess is going to be cut to 15 minutes. Is that including their lunch too? No. So how long is their lunch and then recess? 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Okay. And when will we know about transportation? if you're gonna offer transportation to pay.
Not this year.
Right, not to, you know.
We'll get an answer to you
Regular
before August, yeah, we gotta look at all of that. You know, I think right now, if I had to draw it up, we're first gonna see whether or not some aspect of the program can be salvaged. Transport is a separate issue. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that. Right now, I'm just
But
looking
you
at the
put in
program.
the hours,
Yeah.
especially, like I said, I live 2.2 miles away from the school. And when they, they dropped the transportation originally, I had called the superintendent that was before myself. And basically the answer I got is you have two schools that are near you, which was BB and Ferryway.
Okay.
My son has been coming here since kindergarten. Why should I penalize my son and yank him out of the 5th grade to put him closer to my house, which BB is still over a mile away from me, and he cannot walk there.
You shouldn't, but it was a matter of
Right.
funding, you know, so.
So
you have
that's
an
why,
update on that?
that's why I'm saying, we're willing to pay for
Yeah.
transportation.
Yeah, so let us look at that. We've heard you loud and clear. I'm not sure what we could do on that end, but definitely the programming, we're gonna see if we can come up with something. So let me have, and then we'll come to you.
I just wanted to share a suggestion around possibly using the 7th and 8th graders to be buddies to the younger students who are going to be in K to 6. If there's some sort of like program that they can help them to build leadership skills, it will help their self-confidence, whether it's like reading to a younger student for 15 minutes here, another 30 minutes there, or whatever their strength areas are within the school. And that wouldn't take you guys any extra funding. We're giving our kids for free to help out the younger ones.
All right, put her in the budget office.
If we don't continue to go forth with the after-school program next year due to deficit, because you guys keep saying that, what are the security measures you're gonna provide for our children to get home safely? I know my child has a 30-minute walk from home to school, up hills and down hills, where we don't have crossing guards. So what are you willing to do for our children to make sure they get home safely if this isn't feasible? No crossing guards.
We don't have an answer this evening. That's something we're gonna have to look at and report back to you. You know, we're still, based on you being here tonight, I'm holding out hope we can do something, but short of that, you're right, we are gonna have to come up with a plan to address that. So hang tight for now. Let us go back and try to figure that out. Anybody else before we start winding down? We'll go here, then Anna, and then we'll go to you, Ms. Calvin. Is that fine? I'm not missing anyone over here, am I? Maria?
So I think one of the questions wasn't answered earlier. What was discussed before chopping this after-school program? I have two more questions. And then we gave a lot of suggestions. When are we going to meet again to discuss, what is actually going to work? Way before August. So we shouldn't have to wait until August. I think that's kind of late. But we gave a lot of really creative ways, right? But to answer maybe the lady's question, what was done creatively to really address this before it was chopped? And then maybe for lack of transparency or lack of my awareness, but who was involved in the decision making or in the voting of cutting the hours short on the school? So 3 questions. Of all the schools. Because the parents, I don't think, were involved. I heard that today, so.
On your first question, we'll be back to you in July, as we were just talking. It'll be before August. We'll try and do it sooner rather than later, but it won't be a week, before Labor Day. We'll be back to you soon rather than later, okay, on question 1. Question 2 was, I think you have 2 and 3, right? On the hours and...
You talking the hours here at the Salemwood?
Yeah, I just found out just now that the school hours are cut to 20.
So the school on June 14th held a vote, is required by the state annually in order to participate in the Extended Learning Time Grant Program. That vote was on Friday, June 14th. Results were given to us Saturday morning, the 15th, that the Salemwood School voted to not participate in the Extended Learning Time hours.
When you say school though, that's very general. Was it the
It's the faculty that votes. That's what's required by the grant, is that the faculty must affirm with each year annually will they continue in the extended learning time program. That's what's.
Sorry, just a follow-up clarifying question here. Should the parents be involved that this vote is going to happen on June 14th and not afterwards?
It's up to the faculty. That's the way it is by contract and by grant. There's no input from the families at all on that.
So then my follow-up question, would it be fair to say that communication in this panel is really poor?
Yes.
Because I found out today that the school hours were cut.
Well, we issued a
We put a statement out on June 15th. I sent that out to everybody via ConnectEd, put it on the website, put it out on Twitter, and we would be forthcoming with what the actual hours would be. But in terms of notifying the community, we did that. The mayor and I issued a statement on June 15th that Salemwood would no longer be participating in the extended learning time program.
Maybe after, we should make sure that you're in the system. I don't know, maybe the number's not there, or it's a different number. Because we did a ConnectEd, which goes to individual homes. Well, there was no, school wasn't in session, so we did the next best thing, which was a ConnectEd call to each individual
But I
home.
think if folks would have known that such a vote would be happening on June 14th or whatever it was, people would be expecting something like this.
Okay. So what was I going
The third
next?
question is not answered yet.
What was that again, Dave?
What was, what she asked earlier, what was done before? It was
Oh, yeah,
stopped?
right.
What ways did you look into, like creative ways to say to this?
The after school?
Yeah.
We sat, actually Tony and Jenny, myself had sat, and we had analyzed and looked around at what other communities have done to solve that problem. And what we found was they eliminated it.
They deleted it.
Somerville, Arlington, they don't run 7th and 8th grade programs because they don't have the enrollment. Some of the things we're looking at potentially is running some clubs, but it would not be at the hours of like the after-school program. But we are looking at possibilities of having some clubs in the schools where kids can go to, much like some of the offerings the recreation department has. But that would not necessarily be the same hours. But we're hoping to do some creative things like that to engage some of our 8th grade kids with like a robotics or an art or a dance or something along those lines. If we can get faculty to do that and advise that club, but that would not be the same, 5:30, 6 o'clock hours, obviously.
Okay, where are we going next? We have, yep.
So I know, the superintendent already owned that there's been a huge communication problem here. What I just want to make sure that we're keeping aware of here is that the Salemwood community was also completely left out of the process with the Roosevelt Park issue. And for a lot of parents, it's got to feel like this school is not getting the prioritization that it deserves from the city. My question here, I appreciate you owning this, and I appreciate the city council owning that they didn't necessarily do a good job getting the families involved. The question is, what are we going to do going forward to make sure that these families are heard and are involved before the decision's already been made? So we're not trying to come up with solutions to the problem after the fact.
I mean, I've heard you, and we're going to be more proactive on that and communicate as timely and openly as we possibly can going forward. I can't speak to other things, city issues, but on the school end, we'll get that information out to you as quickly and timely as we can.
Ms. Calvin?
Hi there, I have 3 sort of questions, I guess. One is bouncing off of your comment about the the Roosevelt Park. I have had lots of parents online ask me about why the money wasn't given, or not given, but rooted for the teachers to get their pay instead of the Roosevelt Park. That's one question. Another question, and someone, you mentioned BB, if there are Salemwood parents, they want to transfer their children, I would say that you should have that in multiple languages because of our SCI population. And finally, as a teacher, will the equity of total student load be more equitable across the city instead of, say, 5th grade have 150 students? So every time Mr. Schola corrects a math assignment, he has to correct it 150 times instead of just maybe say 90 like at the BB, like compared to BB. So I'm looking at equity of total student load across the city, the Roosevelt question, and what can parents do to transfer their children?
I can answer question number 1 regarding Roosevelt Park. The money that she's identified couldn't be routed or routed to the Salemwood School. It was from 2 independent grants that are very specific on what the funds can be used for, which is park rehabilitation.
We will be able to address some of the equity in class load now. With the addition of the 3 SEI teachers that we're hiring, we're hoping to be able to use that to begin our redistribution of our SEI students and push some of our SEI students back into the neighborhood schools going forward. This is going to be a protracted process because it will involve a number of factors in there, such as when students are registered, parents wanting to move their kids, which sometimes they don't want to, but we will be able to have some flexibility within that. Frankly, now that this is not an extended learning time school, that affords some of that flexibility on the other end. So there is a benefit to that. And if parents want to transfer their students, they would go to the Parent Information Center. We would do that on a space available basis. Obviously, you know, if there's a space available, we'll accommodate that as much as we can.
Okay, anybody else before we start winding down? Did you have a follow-up, Ms. Kalman?
How do you know